Greetings, Acolytes. Welcome back to the channel, and we're here with another bit of a different video, longer format, more free-flowing. The topic today is something that is extremely interesting, one of my favorite ancient Sith Lords, and according to the comment section, a lot of your guys' favorite Sith Lord, that is Darth Malgus. Malgus, of course, reigned in the High Republic era. He is known as the False Emperor Malgus, the individual that Palpatine always wanted Darth Vader to aspire to be like, but never quite did. Somebody that Palpatine had immense respect for, and an individual that, fascinatingly, despite embodying what it meant to be a Sith Lord, would eventually become disillusioned with the Sith Empire and turn against it. So today we're going to break this analysis into three separate talking points. We're going to talk about Malgus first, how he approaches the dark side, why it makes him unique and respectable as a Sith. Then we're going to talk about why Palpatine felt such a strong sense of admiration and respect for Malgus. And we'll finally wrap it all up in analyzing and comparing Malgus to Vader and how Palpatine always wanted Vader to become sort of like his own Malgus, but how Vader took the teachings of Malgus in an incorrect direction and a quite surprising direction. So I'm joined again here by the archivist, and let's go ahead.
What's up?
Yeah, let's go ahead and break it all down. So the thing for me with Malgus, it can all be brought back to this quote: "I fight because that is what I was made to do. And the Empire is the instrument through which I realize my purpose. The Empire is war made manifest. That is why it is perfect." So just starting off, what do you sort of know about Malgus and how he has etched his name in the history and lineage of the Sith? What makes him stand out?
I would say what makes him stand out is he sort of embodies what you would expect the quintessential Sith warrior type. Like, you had the Sith Marauders, right? The kind of foot soldiers of the whole operation. But very rarely did the Sith Lords really get down there in the grit as often as Malgus did, I would say.
Yeah. No, it's like he says in the quote, you know, he is an instrument of war. That is his purpose. That is his only purpose. And what's really interesting about this is Malgus may not embody what it means to be a perfect Sith Lord, especially during the Rule of Two era and even in the Old Republic era, but he certainly embodies what it means to be the perfect Sith warrior. He engages in war because that is what he was literally born to do. As a child, he was found to be extremely powerful and trained from a very young age to lead armies and to destroy and to conquer. And I don't know what life for Malgus would ever be like if he had accomplished his goal, because it wasn't about the goal for Malgus. It was literally about the journey. And he's interesting because he used the dark side in such a pure way that most other Sith do not. Most other Sith are motivated by what the dark side can give them and the powers that it can give them. But for Malgus, you know, obeying the dark side in its entirety is enough for him, which is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the very first thing that he ever did in the war, which was the reclamation of Korriban. That trailer is just famous now. It's got one of the best 2-on-2 lightsaber duels that we've ever seen, I think, between Malgus, Darth Vindican, and Cal Sindarika and Satele. But the very first thing he went after, he and his master, was the liberation of the Sith homeworld. And I mean, that's sort of the focal point. Even though they had moved their capital at that point to Dromund Kaas under the new Sith Emperor, Malgus was still drawn to the heritage of the dark side, if you will. And he sort of made it like his greatest accomplishment. The sacking of Coruscant was symbolic to him, and it meant a lot because not only did he reclaim the Sith homeworld in the name of the dark side, but through the dark side, he destroyed the throne of light, if you will. That is the Jedi Temple.
Right. His ultimate victory, which is why this whole big event, the sacking of Coruscant and the treaty and the ceasefire that followed is where Malgus officially breaks from the Sith and becomes the false Emperor Malgus. So he puts all of his resources, his time, his efforts, his power. He achieves his goal, and those that scheme, those that sit in the council chambers on their thrones, that never lift their sabers whatsoever, have lied to him about this whole time, about this event. And they're willing to give Coruscant back to the Republic and back to the Jedi as a bargaining chip to further essentially where their bounds of space end. So they seek to exceed their boundaries, not to conquer all. Now, it's of course the Sith Empire's goal, Vitiate at the time who was leading it, goal to conquer the entire galaxy, but they fell under the assumption that they had to give up ground to gain ground in the future.
Yeah, right.
That's not how Malgus felt. Malgus was highly against this. He never believed in surrendering to something or somebody lesser to him, especially on the eve of his greatest triumph. It would essentially be like you work for something. You say you're in a sport and you work and you work and you work and you win the title or you win the championship, but then, you know, your team owner comes out and says, you didn't actually win. We have to give it back to them, but, you know, you can try again next season. That's essentially what happened.
Yeah, it was just a huge slap.
And for somebody like Malgus, yeah, go ahead.
My bad,
huge slap in the face, something he was completely against.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a slap in the face not only to him, but to essentially everything that he stood and fought for and what he believed that the Sith fought for. I mean, he went into the heart of the Republic, walked right through the front door, I mean, Exar Kun style, and just challenged the Jedi right in their living room. I mean, this guy really took the fight to them. And so the fact that he did all this planning, all of this perfect execution, and the Sith are going to just give Coruscant back to the Jedi. Like, after everything, he expected the surface of Coruscant to be glass by now, right? And so it's just, you know, in his mind, when you think about it that way, it's, you know, his entire career is just kind of up in flames.
So what are your thoughts on, like, first off, what are the deeper plans of the Sith? What motivates them to give back Coruscant in this moment?
You know, it's kind of one of those things where, I guess you could say there's always been this need to get revenge on the Jedi and strike back at them for what they did to Korriban back 1,000 years earlier during the old Sith Wars, right? Or I guess it would be much longer. But anyway, I think, you know, there's this need to prove that the Sith aren't inferior despite how many victories the Jedi have pulled over on them. And that the Sith have been forced to go into hiding to rebuild the Empire over the course of another 1,000 years. And I mean, it's kind of a matter of pride, I think. I mean, they've been utterly dismantled and humiliated. The Golden Age of the Sith that was, you know, conceived by Marka Ragnos and was about to be reinstated by Exar Kun just fell apart. And it slipped right through their fingers when they almost had it. So I think they wanted to inflict those feelings upon the Jedi again. Kind of the same way that Palpatine would do the same thing to the Jedi survivors, you know, of Order 66, kind of making them feel how the Sith had to feel in hiding and during the Rule of Two era, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, totally. I think it all boils down to, like, an important thing, and that is that Malgus thought that the Sith could win the war, and a lot of the other Sith believed that they could not at that point. They saw the power of the Republic, they saw the power of the Jedi, and the Sith chose to scheme and have it be a symbolic victory rather than a total victory like Malgus wanted to, because they likely feared the consequences of a full Republic, response.
Yeah,
So that's a major reason.
I would say so. Wasn't there something in the lore about the reason they called for the ceasefire was something to do with Vitiate? It's it's escaping my mind at the moment. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I know. I know Vitiate has attempted to conquer the galaxy a ton of times through heralds. He very rarely goes at it directly. I know of any Sith Lord, Vitiate did conquer the most space, but of course not counting Palpatine.
Right.
But it's never a total victory ever. Surprisingly enough, Palpatine is the first in Legends continuity that is the total victory. And that's probably why he, has such a profound respect for Malgus, is because he came the second closest. I mean, not counting the closest before even Vitiate. Palpatine probably would have sided with Malgus. He probably would have seen this advantage that the Sith had against the Jedi, and he likely would have pushed it.
Yeah, I agree.
And it just goes back to Palpatine and Malgus have such a strong, profound relationship with the dark side.
That's very true. I think that sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, man.
No, it's okay.
No. I've been talking a lot.
No, you're all good, man.
Go for it.
I've been enjoying it. No, I mean, you're absolutely right when you say that because, what was I about to say? I completely forgot.
The point I was getting at is the rule of two Sith, as they approach their final hour of success. Tenebris, Plagueis lose sight of the dark side. Their relationship with the dark side is weakened, actually. Plagueis even mentions that the dark side, he feels it pulling away from him. The Force itself, he's gone so far beyond what it is in its rawest form that it's fleeing from him.
Right.
Where Palpatine loves the dark side in its purest form. He respects the dark side. And out of any other Sith, it seems like Malgus respects and loves the dark side just as Sidious does.
I mean, yeah, he makes those sacrifices for the dark side. I mean, the biggest thing he hated being a part of the Sith Empire was the bickering, the politics, and the backstabbing of the Dark Council. Like, he may not have agreed with the Sith Emperor, but at the time, very few Sith did. They were just he was just the strong leader that they were willing to follow because his plan sounded the best. But, as we know, soon enough, the Sith Emperor started proving himself to be a madman, and the Dark Council kind of started taking over and started playing their political games with everyone. Malgus, being someone who despises politics and prefers to deal with things in an open fight, was, I guess, kind of bringing back to what we said earlier, really backstabbed by this idea that they're holding politics over the dark side.
Right. And I think that the Empire in this moment that Malgus is serving has proven to be flawed. It's not the Empire that Malgus believes that he fought for originally. There's tons of infighting, and this is the moment where Malgus sees that the Empire is fallible. It is, in shambles. There are factions of individuals that are not on the same page. And even worse than not being on the same page, some of them want different things.
It's kind of amusing how it's sort of a mirror of what would happen to the Jedi Order and the Jedi High Council in the Clone Wars.
Right. And it all goes from, like what you said, Vitiate, the Emperor, is starting to lose his mind. He's becoming disillusioned with the Sith. But for a different reason than Malgus. Malgus is loyal to the dark side beyond anything. Vitiate is loyal to himself beyond anything.
Right.
And we've seen before he'll burn every one of his followers to the ground if it means he lives a single more day.
Yeah, you got that one right. I mean, of course, when it comes to sacrificing for the dark side, I mean, Malgus isn't afraid to sacrifice anyone, including his own lover, Alina. The
Right.
moment that he was confronted by that Jedi, I don't remember her name, but she was trying to. It was the apprentice of Venzalo, and she was trying to get revenge on Malgus in one of the Legends novels. And in order to facilitate her escape, she took Alina as a hostage, and Malgus agreed to keep his word, which is another really interesting thing, by the way. As an aside, Malgus keeps his word whenever he makes it. That's interesting that he's kind of honorable like that. But he did let the Jedi go because she had, his lover. And immediately after that, because his lover had proven herself to be a weakness to him, he killed her himself.
Right. And that's, besides Coruscant, that's the moment that Malgus is the most famous for.
Right.
The decision to pledge himself to the dark side and to destroy his own desires in the desire for power. And that is what Palpatine always wanted in Vader. He always wanted somebody that would serve the dark side above everything else.
Oh, yeah.
Vader wallowed in his grief. He obsessed over his love. He obsessed over what he had lost. Yep. And it didn't make him stronger. It made him weaker.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. Absolutely.
Take it away, dude.
Yeah, I'm like this is the one part that I actually do have quite a bit to say. I mean, the division between Vader and Malgus share a lot of similarities. Like a lot of people, me included, kind of address Malgus as the Vader of the Old Republic. I mean, respirator, secret lover, immensely powerful dude. And when you look in Malgus's chapter in the Book of the Sith, Vader is writing in the margins about how much he agrees with all the sentiments that Malgus has. And he even agrees. There was a moment, let's see, I think I have the book right here. I can find it. There's a quote where Malgus is talking about Alina, his lover, and Vader actually comments about it on the bottom of the page. And he says, "Attachment such as this leads to loss and tragedy. I've tried to learn more, but the journals of Darth Malgus do not reveal the fate of his secret love."
Interesting.
Yeah, it's super interesting.
That's the pitfall. That's the fact that Vader did not take from the journals of Malgus what Sidious had desired him to take. Sidious wanted him to be emboldened and inspired by the Dark Lord's ability to sacrifice the one thing he loved in the name of power. But Vader is so obsessed with his own grief that he is invested in Malgus's grief. He's not interested in he's not interested in overcoming it. It defines him. Where Vader's grief defines him and the power of the dark side defines Malgus. And if you took the mind of Malgus and the mindset of Malgus and you put that into Darth Vader, he would be more powerful than the Emperor.
He would be.
Despite any injuries, despite any lack of knowledge, he would be more powerful than the Emperor. And that's the thing. That's what Palpatine wants.
That's what I was about to say. A lot of people think that he doesn't want that. He says it several times in, I forget, I think it was Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader. He talks about how Vader's limitations are purely mental.
Right. Completely mental. Palpatine cares about Vader. I mean, we made a video a little while ago about this.
Yeah, I remember.
He doesn't care for him like another individual,
No, absolutely
loves
not.
a friend of theirs dearly. He is his prize. In Dark Empire, I remember Sidious reminisces about Vader destroying him, but how he doesn't really even hold it against Vader because it was such a pleasure to create such a monster. And I've always found that quote to be really interesting. That even after Vader has betrayed him, even after he's turned to the light side, the idea of what Palpatine accomplished with Vader is still something that he will forever, look back upon fondly, no matter where he is.
That is interesting. So. I mean, I know that despite that, there were a lot of pitfalls and a lot of roadblocks in that journey because, as you pointed out, he had gifted the journal of Malgus to Vader for inspiration, just as he had once gained inspiration from it. And if you go and read, the entire time, the only thing Vader really comments on are the Sith war droids and like the type of military tactics they used and like the starfighters. The entire point of why Sidious gave him the journal flies right over his head. He's just not even paying attention to the entire point of the lesson. As you said, because he is so like swallowed up in his grief, and he's still looking for a way to cope with what happened, when Sidious is trying to be like, what you need to do is just kill those feelings the same way that Malgus killed his lover. Like, Sidious says this in one of the canon comics. He's like, forget Padme, forget Obi-Wan, like, move on.
Yeah, embrace the dark side above your desires and the pleasures of your life. Embrace power beyond that. Malgus did that. He embraced his injuries. They did not hold him back. He was severely injured, nowhere near to the point of Vader, but he was injured. And Palpatine giving him the journal is like, look, dude, this is what you could be like. And more than that, you could be so much more than this. This is an individual that was injured, nearly killed at the hands of a Jedi, a Jedi who many believe to be lesser, just like Vader did. And he had a pitfall where he loved this individual that made him weaker. And that's what Vader says in Revenge of the Sith. He accuses Obi-Wan of using Padme's love to weaken him in that moment.
Wow.
And it's interesting that Vader draws that exact connection that Malgus draws. Vader sees Obi-Wan stand, and he views this as a betrayal because that love has entered, his mind and his heart. His ability to touch the dark side has been diminished. So Vader knows about that. He knows that he will be more powerful if he can move beyond these things, but he chooses not to, which is something that Sidious holds against him for his entire life.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of interesting how Sidious, he seems like he's always scheming against Vader, but when you really read the comics and you really see the stories through, all the things that Sidious does supposedly against Vader is always more of a test or a lesson to build him up. And it's interesting that you should say that, because he's like, Sidious in a weird way wants to be on Vader's side, but in like the most twisted way possible. And, it's as you say, Sidious has not just read about Sith overcoming their physical limitations, but he actively saw it happen. His own master, Darth Plagueis, had to wear a respirator, just like Malgus and Vader did, because he got his throat slit by a razor blade due to a failed assassination attempt. And he still went on to discover the secret to manipulating the midichlorians.
Right. And I think that even Malgus took it way farther than Plagueis did.
Oh, yeah.
Plagueis' injuries terrified him. He became extremely reclusive.
That's also true.
When Malgus said, he was like, I'm injured, so be it. I do not need even physical might. I have the dark side.
The man, while injured, walked straight through the front doors of the Jedi Temple. I mean, yeah, he sacked Coruscant, with those injuries.
They didn't stop. They didn't stop him. He let every pitfall that Malgus was faced with, he overcame through strength in the dark side. And pitfalls that Vader is faced with, he has these mental blocks that, they have held him back. And Palpatine knows this. And it's like you were saying, this is the definition of an abusive relationship with Palpatine and Vader. Palpatine wants the best for... Okay, maybe not the best.
Right.
Palpatine wants Vader to be more powerful than he is. But there's that sense of just massive disappointment that Palpatine will never get over. It's that gut feeling where he sees Anakin on Mustafar in the novel for Revenge of the Sith, and he entertains the idea of turning around and leaving him.
Yeah, I mean...
There's always going to be that part of Palpatine that hates Vader for that reason.
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you got to think about it from Palpatine's perspective, too. We've talked about this at length in several videos, but I can never keep myself from bringing it up. I mean, all this planning went into turning Anakin Skywalker to the dark side. He sat by and watched him train as a Jedi, go through his life, and at any point, Palpatine could have stepped in and, advanced his plans, but he bided his time until the perfect moment. Anakin is powerful, he's full of grit, and he's got a chip on his shoulder now, and, he's the chosen one, and he's ready to become Lord Vader. He gets one afternoon of glory, reveling in the full power of the Dark Chosen One, before he is literally just ruined by Kenobi. Ruined, spoiled. Everything that Palpatine had wanted for Vader literally went up in flames on that black sand beach.
It did literally go up in flames, didn't it?
Yeah.
But it's so interesting. I mean, we talk about it all the time. Palpatine says, okay, so a lot of the times there are lore contradictions upon lore contradictions upon lore contradictions. Yeah. And of everything, this one is probably the biggest one. There's no clear answer on what I'm about to say, because every book has a different one. The upper limits of Vader's power after his injuries. Sometimes Palpatine says he's completely ruined. He'll never be anywhere near what he could be. In other sources, Palpatine is like his mental, blocks are the only thing holding him back. He has the full might of the Chosen One at his disposal. His injuries mean nothing. His loss of midichlorians mean nothing. Other times it's like, the loss of the midichlorians was massive. You are forever capped at 80% my power.
Right.
Like the sources and Vader's upper limits in the suit are never consistent.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
So my headcanon and what I take, and I'd love to hear how you take this after I explain
give it to me.
I lie. I think the truth is in the middle of it all. I think that Vader's full potential that he could have achieved as Anakin is gone.
Yes.
I don't believe that those limits will ever be achieved through Vader in life.
No way. Yeah, I agree.
I also believe, though, with the turn of that he still has the potential to become more powerful than Palpatine in his suit by a pretty sizable margin. Not double Palpatine like he could have been,
right?
But more powerful.
Okay.
And that's sort of my headcanon.
I would be inclined to agree with that logic. I mean, I kind of have held a loose opinion on it heretofore, kind of going with more what the whole 80% of Palpatine that sort of George Lucas stated. But of course, George Lucas said that was, I think, I might be completely misquoting, but I believe what Lucas was saying was that was his power in the original trilogy. Like, he is 80% of Palpatine's. Not that his, like, full potential was cut down to just that.
That's how I interpret it.
Right, yeah. So, I think I would agree with that. I think it would definitely take a lot of work. I think it's not only just the mental blockages, but he would need to find a way to overcome some of those physical limitations, if that meant him sucking it up and trying to put himself in a new suit. I honestly feel like a new suit would do wonders for Vader, both mentally and physically.
I don't know. I think that's another interesting debate too.
Yeah.
Is it's like where would Vader reach his full in suit potential? Because I'm sort of more inclined to believe that if he got past his feelings of grief and complete regret and self-loathing and gave himself to the dark side, that he could be more powerful in a suit that still hurts him all the time than he ever would be in a new suit. I think that he would gain more powerful, but he would be way more powerful if his mental position changed to Malgus, far more important than any sort of physical weakness that the suit imposes.
We kind of see what that might have looked like kind of in the original trilogy. At this point, Vader's grief has simmered down and has calloused over to where he's just cold. Like, there's not really much man left by the time of the original trilogy, but when the the Galactic Civil War is going on, Vader actually has a reason to be out and active. He has a reason to use his lightsaber to hunt down rebels and, of course, to capture Luke, who he becomes obsessed with after the destruction of the Death Star. We see a little bit of that Malgus spirit, where Vader has this one-track goal: destroy the rebellion and capture Luke Skywalker.
Right.
And
that's really interesting because he does get a power buff in Empire.
Yeah.
It's made very clear in Legends that he's more powerful after he finds out Luke is his son.
Yes, I was literally about to say that. Empire Strikes Back is Vader close to his most powerful that we've seen him, and it is so interesting that we're getting physical evidence of Vader's power being intrinsically tied to his mindset.
Right.
I think that's why his power fluctuation is so inconsistent, and that's why he was so powerful in Kenobi too.
Mm-hmm. Until he faced Obi-Wan, where he felt, conflicted, and that's sort of not conflicted is the wrong. It's not conflicted in the typical conflicted.
Right.
He's conflicted with the identity of Anakin and Vader. He's not conflicted about killing Obi-Wan.
Right.
That's not. There's nothing there, but he's conflicted about who he is, and the Emperor says that at the end of the Kenobi series. He essentially is like, if you need to give up this hunt because this is Anakin's hunt, it's not Darth Vader's hunt.
Yeah, I think people want to pretend like Anakin went away for a really long time after his transformation into Darth Vader. I really don't think that's the case. I think Vader continued to wrestle with that Anakin side of him, even if Anakin just kind of got buried more and more over the years.
Right.
I think...
you see Vader show up when he kills the Tuskens, when he chooses to murder Dooku. The same can be said.
That's true, yeah. I think it's just the dominant personalities sort of switch roles after his fall to the dark side. Whereas Vader...
Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
No, you're all good. I was like, whereas Vader before, like in the Revenge of the Sith novelization, was described as this slimy, cold dragon coiled around Anakin's heart, constantly threatening him and whispering to him about his greatest fears. I feel like once he, becomes that dragon, Anakin sort of takes the place of what the dragon once held, where he's sort of this whispering, or voice trying to tell Vader to stop, to make the right decisions, trying to push to find his son.
Right. No, they're always there. You're right. Neither one has been destroyed, and that's sort of what Ahsoka shows, There's still always going to be Vader, and there's still always going to be Anakin. No matter what point in the timeline we make, they're always going to have that. And back to Malgus, Palpatine knows that if Vader thinks like Malgus, and if he changes the way that he thinks, that he will kill Anakin completely.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
true.
what he wants. If he changes the way that he thinks, if he changes the way that he approaches the dark side, Anakin will die.
It's kind of
and that's
interesting.
What Palpatine wants.
Something kind of occurred to me just now when you said that. It's so interesting that when they figure out who Luke Skywalker is in Empire, when Sidious reveals that it's the son of Anakin Skywalker, it's interesting to me that at that point, Sidious is so tired of Vader that he's ready to replace him. Like, he could have very well forced Vader to kill Luke, therefore squashing whatever was left of Anakin Skywalker. He could have tried that route. But after, by that point, 23 years. After, 22 or 3 years of dealing with Vader's wishy-washiness, moping around, refusal to move on, like, Palpatine's just done, and he's ready to just replace him at that point with Luke.
Right. And Vader, the part of him that wants to be loyal to the dark side has sort of come to terms with that in Return of the Jedi. He's almost resigned himself to death.
So weird.
And he has to. It is weird. His mindset in Jedi is fascinating. Because the part of Vader, the part that's loyal to the Emperor, has accepted that he maybe should die, and it's tragic. Then Anakin says that he doesn't have to go out like that.
I think it is interesting that is the more nuanced version of Vader's conflict in Return. The way it's often talked about is it's not really Vader going, should I be good or should I be bad? Like, it's not really like that. It's more like, should I resign myself to die as Darth Vader and allow the cycle to continue with my son? Or, should I actually, is there hope that I could live with my son, whether he and I are on the dark side or the light side? Like, is there a possibility that I could actually be happy?
Right.
He's struggling with hope.
I've always found he is struggling with hope. Yeah, that's perfect. The thing that's always interested me is what about Vader changes from Empire to Jedi, where at first he wants to use Luke to defeat the Emperor, but in the end he's comfortable letting Luke have the same fate that he had. And I wonder what intrinsically in Vader changes to where he thinks that maybe he could overthrow Palpatine to there's no hope.
I think it was the moment that Luke decided to choose death over joining the dark side.
Right.
Whenever on Bespin, that scene has been analyzed to death. The moment that Luke lets go, falls into the pit, and Vader's arm just sort of, helplessly just drops to his side as he stares down. Like, Vader was not okay after that moment. That kind of rocked his world a little bit. And that's kind of explored a little bit more in the Vader comics, where he sees that moment, and it's very similar to what he experienced with Padme on Mustafar, where he offered her at least what he thought was everything she ever wanted, and she refused completely, despite how much she loved him. And that scene with Padme and then his son Luke flashes back and forth between his mind in the comics. I think that was the moment that solidified that there's either a lot of hope or there's no hope at all.
I like comparing Vader to Malgus. in Return of the Jedi, maybe oftentimes we think of like Vader needs to let go of Padme and Vader needs to conquer that beast within him. But perhaps in Return of the Jedi, Vader's Elena is Luke.
Ooh.
And maybe there's the part of Vader, I believe there's the part of Vader that if he can sit by and watch his son die, or if he can even kill his son, that he will achieve a power that he had always wanted. And I think that's probably exactly what happened.
Yeah. It's more than likely.
But,
I mean, that might have been a part of it. Of course, the way I usually watch that scene, their final duel, it's like Vader is pushing against Luke, but it almost, in the way he's fighting, the way he talks, it almost seems like he's just sort of going through the motions. It doesn't really feel like that Vader's heart is in that fight. Like he's not really fighting Luke with his full might the way he was on Bespin.
Right. And you get that interpretation when they meet. I mean, when they talk after Luke surrenders, they're not talking as enemies, they're talking as a family.
I know.
Which is really sad, and you can feel for the first time in the whole series, the softness in Vader.
Yeah, you really
is so good.
You really can. Like, I love that scene. The way it really is sad, because the way he just very gently says, "It's too late for me, son." Like, they just so naturally call each other father and son and are, speaking, and Luke is exhorting Vader as if he was, his real father, like they had been doing this their whole lives.
Right.
Just kind of further stoking that conflict in Vader, to the point where I don't think he was able. That's Luke. He even said it. He's like, you didn't kill me then on Bespin. I don't believe you'll destroy me now. Because he could sense that Vader was wanting to kill him to make Luke his Elena, basically, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it.
Right. I think that scene in Return of the Jedi is so amazing.
Absolutely.
I even love when he turns on, and it's incredible because you can't see any emotions on Vader's face, but you know exactly what he's thinking.
Yes.
Just because of the way that he talks and the way he moves.
Mm-hmm.
But when he turns on Luke's lightsaber, you get a sense of extreme pride within Vader. That his son is able to, make his own lightsaber and further his training and become more powerful and even become, a Jedi. And there's such a beaming pride within him. And then there's the moment where he sort of comes back to reality and understands that he'll likely have to kill this boy or die. And that's just it's so good.
I love that. I didn't think at length about that before, but as you were talking, I can really see that. It's like the way he examines Luke's saber and he kind of compliments its construction. It really is interesting because it's like, and it makes it even more interesting when you remember that Luke's lightsaber design in Return is heavily based off of Obi-Wan's lightsaber design. And yet there's no hostility from Vader at looking at this.
Right. Incredible. Well, anyway, man, I'm pretty much out of points.
Me too, yeah.
When it comes to the comparison. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you stayed this long, means a lot. We're going to be doing more of these discussion free flow videos. If you guys have a topic and an analysis that you'd like to see us do on a character in Star Wars, an event in Star Wars, our previous video was sort of putting Yoda on trial as Grand Master.
Oh, yeah.
And whether or not we thought he was a good Grand Master or a bad Grand Master. And I think that's really interesting as well. But as always, we want to hear what you think. Is Vader a failed experiment of Malgus? What would happen if he achieved the, mental state that Malgus did? How powerful is that Darth Vader? Is he more powerful than Sidious? Is he as powerful as Sidious? And what does the Empire look like of a solely in command Darth Vader and Anakin has been killed? We'd love to hear what you guys think. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching, and may the Force be with you.